Good evening. For those of you that are logged into Zoom, we are just running a little bit behind due to some technical difficulties on our end here. We will be starting the school committee meeting momentarily.
First is an adoption of the minutes from December 2nd. We'll then have public comment. Public comment will be open for 15 minutes, 3 minutes per speaker. The vice chair will time and will notify you when you're coming up to the 3 minutes if needed. Then from there, we're going to shift to my left, your right, to our superintendent for his report, where there are 2 items. First is around MCAS, question 2, and where we go from here now that that has passed. Then item number 2 is entry findings update. Then after that, we will skip over subcommittee reports and discussions unless any members have anything, but as of now, there isn't anything under that category. Same goes for motions and resolutions. Then from there, we'll take points of personal privilege from the members. And then after that, we're going to entertain a motion to go into executive session. If approved, it will be for 3 items. The first is the approval of the executive session minutes of December 2nd, 2024. The second item is around Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A1, to discuss open meeting law complaints as follows. December 18th, 2024, filed by Brian DeLacey / Malden News Network against the Malden School Committee. And it's for the executive session minutes of November 13th, 2023. December 18th, 2024, filed by Brian DeLacey / Malden News Network against the Malden School Committee. And this is around executive session minutes of December 4th, 2023. And then finally, December 18th, 2024, filed by Brian DeLacey / Malden News Network against the Malden School Committee. And these are the executive session minutes of January 18th, 2024. After that, there is one final item, which is pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 38, Section A3, the Malden School Committee convenes an executive session to discuss strategy sessions in preparation for contract negotiations with the Malden Education Association. Because doing it out in open will have a detrimental effect on the bargaining position of the committee. So are there any questions of the members before we begin? Then from there, we will come back out and move adjournment after executive session. All right, hearing no questions, let's first rise and pledge allegiance to our flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please remain standing for a moment of silence in honor of all those who have fought for our country and continue to do so today. Thank you. We'll now have our clerk call the roll.
That's it.
Here.
Mr. Drummy? Mr. McCarthy?
Here.
Ms. Spatafora,
Here.
Ms. Macklin,
Here.
Ms. Horty,
Here.
Mr. Gray,
Here.
Mr. Bernard,
Here.
Ms. Rose Iberg,
Here.
Superintendent Sippel,
Here.
Student Representative Catherine Fontanilla.
All right, we have a quorum sufficient to allow us to come together. Let's take a look at these minutes from December 2nd. Any questions on those? Okay, we'll entertain a motion to approve. Motion by Mr. Bernard, seconded by Mr. McCarthy. All those in favor say aye. Anybody opposed? The ayes have it. That carries unanimously. Now we're down to public comment. Anybody wishing to address the school committee can do so now. We only ask that you state your name and address for the record. Again, we ask that you keep your comments to 3 minutes. Public comment is now open. Please come to the podium. Good evening.
Good evening. Hello, my name is Stacy Rubin, and I reside at 33 Bloomworth Street. I have a note of thanks and then a request for the committee. So first, I am sure that you're not thanked enough for your work. I really appreciate all that you do for our students and the families in this city. We have some of the most amazing public schools out there, so thank you for that. A special thanks also to the committee for at the BB school in particular. We didn't have a band option for our electives and really appreciate the work at the beginning of this school term to get an after school option so that there is band now available as a club. So thank you for the good work. And now a request. So I am a member of the BB School Council and have been for a very long time. We have an open position for a Spanish language exploratory teacher for the middle school. That position remains unfilled. This is the third school year where my child and all of her classmates have not been able to take advantage of a Spanish language exploratory. The school council several years ago had supported the leadership at BB to post that position. It remained unfilled with we didn't get a lot of candidates. We made a request to this council asking that you make that position open to other languages beyond Spanish, and that request was denied. We have reposted the position as a Spanish language position this year. I believe Dr. Murphy posted that, or the relevant leaders posted that on October 9th. It is still open with no applicants. I have heard this council talk about the need for equity across the K-8 schools. There are numerous K-8 schools that have a Spanish language exploratory. BB does not. So I come here as a member of the school site council requesting that that position be expanded beyond Spanish to other world languages, because it's just not equitable for our BB students to continue a third year without the Spanish exploratory. And if there's anything that the school council can do to work with you and the school committee, please let us know. Thank you.
Thank you. We will follow up with you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wishing to address the school committee can do so now. Good evening.
Good evening and Happy New Year.
You as well.
My name is Dawn O'Toole. I live at 130 Adams Street in Malden. I am an ESP in the integrated kindergarten at BB. I am here tonight to ask the committee to look at the weather chart for recess in the student handbook and to resend this to the policy subcommittee. The current chart is vague at best, and I feel it doesn't accurately take into consideration the wind chill or the humidity in the summer. At BB, our kindergarten recess is out in the back and we're up on a hill, and sometimes with the wind, it's extremely cold. Many of our students, not just at BB, but across the city, have just moved here to Malden from other countries and have not experienced our winters in New England and do not have the proper winter gear. Thank you in advance for your consideration on resending this to policy.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Anybody else wishing to address the school committee can do so now.
If you are watching from Zoom and wish to participate in public comment, I just ask that you use the raise hand feature so we can activate your microphone and you can participate. So this is open to Zoom as well.
All right, we're going to close public comment. Now let's shift to our superintendent, Dr. Sippel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Give me a moment to pull up our presentation. All right, Happy New Year to all of you, members of the committee, Mr. Chair, and Happy New Year to those of you who are here this evening and those of you who are watching at home in a warm place, I hope. As the Mayor Christensen mentioned, we'll be talking about MCAS question 2 and updates in the district that are going to be needed as a result of that. And then also an update on entry findings. So we have, as I've talked about in our previous presentations, 3 core values that are guiding all of our work as a district administration. One is to include and collaborate. And tonight you'll hear about efforts that we're making on several fronts to improve things for our students and for our children, for our staff. And we have a commitment to include people in decisions that are going to impact them. And you'll see that as a theme through several of the things I'll be sharing. Even when they may not be satisfied or totally in agreement with the decisions that are made, people will have an opportunity to be included in that and give input, meaningful input into those decisions. We also, as far as embracing growth, by that, we mean that we see the potential in every single child, every single student, and every adult in our district. And we're committed to developing that potential and to coming alongside students, coming alongside adults to help them become a better version of themselves so they can be what they're destined to be. And then lastly, all of our students doing right by all kids. We want every single student in Malden Public Schools to have the most options possible when they finish their time in our district, when they graduate. And so we want to make sure that we're doing everything we can to make sure that is the case for every single student, whether they have someone who is advocating for them out loud and knows how to engage with the school and with the system or not. So again, you'll be hearing examples of these values in action as we talk about the various things that we're going to be talking about tonight. As you know, in November, a lot of things happened on Election Day. One of them was the passage of question 2. Which has implications for graduation requirements. And so I'm going to be sharing about that and then also talking about why MCAS is still important, even though it's no longer a part of the graduation scenario for our students. And then what comes next. We, by state law, Massachusetts for many years has had criteria for graduation. And those criteria include 2 basic buckets of things. One are the local requirements that each district has as far as coursework and other requirements that each district has established. And then the other are standards of a competency determination that were established. And this was before my time in Massachusetts, certainly, but I think it may have been a part of ed reform back in '93 that this competency determination was established. And so I want to talk about the local requirements first, because this has not changed. These 2 elements of local requirements and competency determination are still on the books. We have, for the class of 2025 and for every class for the last several years, a minimum of 21 credits that students need to pass, combination of 1-year credits, full-year classes, and half-year courses that need to account for these subjects. 4 years of English, 4 years of math. You can see them all listed there. I'm sure a lot of you are already very familiar with them because they've been in place for some time. Through the efforts of many people, and I want to give a shout out especially to our Director of Guidance, Erin Craven, who really led and coordinated a lot of this effort. You all, as a committee, several years ago, adopted Mass Core and the alignment of our graduation requirements with Mass Core, which is extremely important because what that allows is a student, if they have obtained a high school diploma from Malden, they have already passed coursework that will make them eligible for admission to University of Massachusetts in the state university system. The big change, and this is going to be in effect for the class of next year seniors, the class of 2026. So really a lot of foresight that the committee had in adopting Mass Core several years ago. There are other districts that are scrambling to catch up with Malden and other districts that have already adopted Mass Core. And so it's actually a thing that we should be proud of as a district. With the practical implication for class of 2026 is that they need to have 2 years of world language as a part of their transcript and also a full year of fine arts. And those specific requirements were not a part of the graduation local requirements beforehand. So again, there's local requirements and then competency determination. Before question 2, the competency determination was essentially whether they had met a minimum score on MCAS, English language arts, math, and science. And that served as a proxy for whether students had achieved 10th grade proficiency, if you will, on a host of subjects, but MCAS only tested those 3. Now, competency determination is still a thing, but it's defined by school committee policy. And so that's what the essence of what I wanted to bring to you tonight. Before question 2, again, this is the actual language from Massachusetts general law, the competency determination, and at the bottom it links to a series of assessments. And in, again, the Massachusetts general law and in the regulations, it was 10th grade English language arts, math, and science that were the metric that students had to pass a certain score on in order to be considered competent for graduation. Now, the text in red is what the text of question 2 was. And what they've said is that students must satisfactorily complete coursework that's been certified by the student's district as showing mastery in the skills and competencies and knowledge contained in the state academic standards and frameworks in the areas measured by the MCAS high school that were administered in 2023, which were English language arts, math, and science. And so this coming month, in the month of February, I'll be bringing for you, on behalf of the administration, a proposal on what our policy, our new policy should be as far as competency determination, because we as a district need to have a policy that's aligned with question 2. And in essence, you can expect that it will entail specifying which courses we expect students to have passed and what proficiency we expected them to have passed those courses. But I'll have more detail for that in February. Meanwhile, MCAS is still important. Federal and state law require all public schools to administer an assessment, standardized assessment adopted by the state in grades 3 through 8 and high school, and students are expected to participate. The MCAS is actually, it's a good thing that we're doing that because it's aligned to the standards that we teach starting in grade kindergarten all the way up. And so it's a very important, it's only one measure, but it is an extremely useful measure for us to see how are our students doing and what we've been teaching them since kindergarten all the way up through high school. It's also an effective measure of readiness for whether students are ready for life beyond high school, whether they choose to go into a post-secondary college or university or not. The skills that are tested at the 10th grade level are important skills for any student to have, regardless of what they choose to do after high school. And then the last thing I just want to say about this is that the state Department of Education is still legally required to use MCAS performance for accountability purposes, to measure our performance as a district and also to assign corrective action if our district were to fall below a certain threshold. And this is extremely important for us to keep in mind because I previously worked in a district that had corrective action, and it's very, very, it's not fun, to say the least. And the other thing I would say about corrective action to keep in mind is we have a situation now, since we are not in corrective action, we're not in the bottom 10% of districts. We don't have any schools that are in the bottom 10% of districts, which is a great thing. And because of that, there is a cap on any charter school enrollment from Malden Public Schools. If we were to fall into corrective action, and MCAS is not the only criterion that they would use to determine that, but if we were to, that cap would be lifted. And it could create additional challenges for all of our schools and all of our students, which is, still hopefully never going to happen. But I just wanted to just make sure that we all knew and the public knew that MCAS is still a very, very important assessment for our students and also for our district. So next steps, again, I'm going to bring a recommendation for your consideration at the next meeting on what our new competency determination policy should be. And the committee will obviously ultimately make a decision about that. We have interventions with our current students that I'll speak a little bit more about tonight for the current class of 2025 to make sure that they are able to cross the finish line successfully. And we have an acceleration academy to better prepare our 9th and 10th graders. Our 10th graders who are going to be taking that assessment this year, and the 9th graders will be taking it next year. It assesses what they've learned in 9th and 10th grade, essentially. So that is my the update on MCAS, and I'll pause there, Mr. Chair, if that's okay.
Let's stop there and take some questions. Any questions of the members? Let's go to Ms. Macklin first.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple of questions for the superintendent. So I know that you're going to present recommendations to us. Will that take effect immediately once approved by this committee? Because my wonder is, how will we measure for this year, the competency for this year?
Thank you for that question, Member Macklin. Yes, so the State Department of Education hosted webinars for school district leaders in December to basically present this charge to us. They are not making specific recommendations of what districts should do. Some districts have said, well, can we choose to use MCAS or something? And that's really up to the committee. We're recommending that that it be based on passing courses as question 2 stipulates. And the specifics are going to be which courses, and then what score or grade will be sufficient to constitute competency. It will take effect for this year because for the class of 2025, if a student has, especially for students who have not passed MCAS, but really for all of our students, the competency is based on school district policy, not on MCAS.
Thank you, Ms. Macklin. Let's go to Ms. Horty.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Superintendent Sippel, I have a couple questions and a request, actually. Can I start with my request? Is that all right? I know you mentioned that you would present a recommendation to us about the competency determination. And as I'm looking at the local graduation requirements that we have now, what I'd really like to see are a real life schedule in action per grade. I'd like to see what that actually looks like for a student at the high school so that we as a committee know what the day-to-day would be for a student. I also am wondering about, and I'm not saying that I'm looking for this the next time we meet, but just going forward, I think it would be helpful for us to understand when we're talking about, let's say, passing ninth grade English, could we please understand what are, the 5 most important skills that need to be learned there? I think it's easier for us to say, a passing grade or a C or whatever it may be, if we have an idea of what the actual meat of the education is. I think it's harder for us to determine otherwise. It would be for me. It would be hard if I didn't have an idea of what the coursework was or what the expectation was for the student. And well, I guess it's not really a question, but it's more of how is this state oversight going to work for this? And I only say that because we know that there are, 351 communities. I know there's less school districts than that. We know DESE makes errors. How are we going to communicate with them and they're going to communicate with us so that the competency determination that we make clearly on paper, it meets what they're looking for. I just know that there have been, I don't want to get too much into it because I know you're going to talk about it more later, but I think you know where I'm going. There's been some communication errors about what counts for what kind of situation. And I'm just being mindful going forward that there is no confusion about what we've determined as the policy versus what they either think we're doing or are assuming that we're doing. Like, what's the check and balance in there? Does that make sense?
I think so.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And I mean, the sample schedules, just to be clear, our full intent is to make sure that if there were any student that didn't have the opportunity to graduate this coming spring rather, it would be because of a issue with the local requirements that were already in place and not because of the competency determination policy. We definitely are not interested in seeing anyone held back graduating because of the competency determination changing at the last minute. That doesn't feel fair or equitable in any way.
No.
So you can assure that, and I guess that's to the point that Member Macklin mentioned also, that the policy recommendation would be such that it would be in essence folded into the local requirements that were already in place.
Okay, that sounds good. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Horty. Over to Ms. Spatafora.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, and I don't mean to say this in a smug manner, but we've talked about policy and procedure before. So I just want to understand, you're going to present a recommendation to this committee or to our policy subcommittee? Because I think something like this really needs to sit in a subcommittee to be worked on and not just voted on the stage. So, because I'd really like to see what surrounding districts are also doing and making sure we're doing the work with thorough investigation before it gets improved. But I do know that time is of the essence as well, because we
Right.
want our graduating or our seniors to know, what they have to meet before. And here we are in January with
Right.
them, potentially crossing a stage in just 5 months. So I guess, should we be making a motion to send this down into policy? Is my question, Mr. Chair.
Well, there's nothing before us to send.
Well, we have a current policy that says that we use MCAS
Hmm.
as a competency determination, so we have to effectively change that policy. So we would be sending our current graduation requirements.
But there wouldn't be meeting on that until we have something from our superintendent,
Well,
right?
I would hope he would come to this policy subcommittee with a recommendation, and in the subcommittee, we would then.
But typically the recommendation should be seen by everybody up here in
And
order to
then-
refer it. Yeah, I think
But
so.
again, time is of the essence. So if that happens in February, then it goes down to policy in February, and then it doesn't come back to us until a March meeting.
Well, unless Madam Chair expedites whatever is recommended and we have a special meeting perhaps to approve it, but I think we've always wanted to give an opportunity for the whole membership to see what's being referred, because they may not want it referred. I've seen where motions have been voted down and not referred. So I think by us, presuming, could open up a Pandora's box going forward. Other members could just make motions without having any context to a subcommittee. At least that's the way I've seen it over the years. It's not to say it's right, but I just think we'd want to have a look at it first collectively and determine that, you know what, yeah, this should be referred, or perhaps we all agree on what's being recommended and we do it right here on the floor. But I think we need that first, the recommendation. But I'm just I don't know how everybody else feels, but that's my gut reaction. Anybody want to weigh in on that? Mr. Bernard? I don't know if I'm making sense either. Mr. Louise tells me I often do not, so that could be the case too. Mr. Bernard?
No, I think I'm okay with going and having it be here first in February. Certainly if, the chair of policy and procedure wants to go and get included as to go and take an initial look at it, I don't have a problem with that.
Okay.
Just to go and then say, I want this before, but you guys are gonna have to send it back to us. Or she says, it looks good, and unless the majority says they want it.
Yeah.
I'm, as long as it's, relatively clear, and I don't think I think it's within our capacity to go in and actually take a look at it at that point and make a decision, with that understanding that time is of the essence to either approve it or say, there's a couple items here we don't like and we need to go and have this reworded. And then at that point, we can go and we can hold a special after.
Yeah, just typically, and again, I'm just speaking out loud, the public, the community has always been aware, especially something like this, what it is, what it says. It's being referred by us collectively. This is, and I want to hear from the chair of the policy subcommittee. This is just saying, sort of, let's make a placeholder. People will find out about it later and see what it is that's transpiring. And then it comes back out to us. And by then, the process is over. So that's, again, not end of the world. We could do it. I'm not going to stand in the way of what the vice chair is saying, but just procedurally.
No, and that, like I'm saying, I'm agreeing with you that we should go in the spirit of transparency.
Yeah.
To make sure that people, parents and students and community members know that we're doing our job and that they can see what's happening in front of them.
Yeah. Let's hear from the chair of policy. I don't know if that makes sense. Let me go over to her.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One request that I would have, knowing that this would be a fairly in-depth new policy to be looking at, is to give ample time if we're going to send it to full committee. I need more than a day or two to look into it. Also, I do the ability to send it back to the subcommittee, and we can, work on maybe if we need to do a special meeting also to pass it. Also gives the our constituents time to look it over, raise any kind of questions and get feedback too. But I think that's an important thing too, as far as, I know that this is a short timeline and I have ultimate trust in, the people we have in place to create the policy, but it doesn't hurt to also have people weigh in with that eye. And so if we get it and only have a couple of days and then have to vote on the fly, sure, pass it. And then, you hate that idea that then the very next day you get a call, hey, but what about? So I do understand that we need to act quickly on this. I agree with that. And I know we've got things in place so we can get this through if need be, which is scheduling meetings, appropriately. But I do think it's important to get feedback on it, and to give us that adequate time to do a little digging on our own. That's
So
where I
you're
am.
saying, would you prefer to wait until the superintendent makes his recommendation, or should we
Have
make a
something in
motion right
writing.
now to get the ball rolling?
I think to have it, as you've said, I think to have him come to us, again, I would like to be able to see it in writing with enough time though for that meeting. So if we have questions, we can process them and get those ready for you. And then because there could be things that we send it right back to the drawing board. If we're all are sitting here like, no,
Okay.
could be part of it. And then send it to committee, which also then I'm like, I could not pull it up, but I know we should be checking exactly how that whole policy procedure does.
All right, maybe as a
so-
compromise, Ms. Spatafor, what we could do is, now that you're hearing, maybe we, on your end, could try to move the timeline up and we could have a special meeting just to have everybody see it and then refer it over.
That's certainly possible, Mr. Chair. We had, I'll just share that we had not much time from the time that DESE came up with its guidance on how to address this issue in December before the holiday break. And so we had originally thought that it might be possible to bring a recommendation to you today, but because it was a little more complicated than we anticipated, that's the reason why we asked to wait until the February meeting. So.
All right, why don't we do this, Superintendent? Let's try to expedite. And Ms. Lisa, let's be prepared to have a special meeting on this one item. And perhaps we could even, I forget when that remote law ends. Is it March, the end of March, I think? Then the governor has to renew it. I think we have another month or two on us being allowed to meet remotely. So perhaps we'll do that for the members, just to refer it over to policy. And then we could get the ball rolling ahead of time. So does that work for everyone? I'm sorry, Mr. Gray, I missed you. My apologies. Let's hold that thought until we hear from Mr. Gray.
It's okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a quick note. I just wanted to agree with your original assessment. It just, before you even said anything, I was thinking the exact same thing. Normally, the superintendent present to all of us and then say, okay, well, this needs more work. We'll send it to policy. You know, that's how we typically do things. And I just wanted to say I agree with your initial assessment.
Yeah, and I know where Ms. Spatafor is coming from. So we're going to nudge the superintendent to try to do this sooner. And then we'll perhaps meet remotely on this one item just to get the ball started. Is everybody okay with that then? All right, let's take some more questions if there are. Did you have more, Ms. Spatafor? You had the floor.
So,
Let me just ask one from the chair, Superintendent. I know sometimes the state legislature, for better or for worse, after a question is adopted, does play with the language. Have you any indication that they are done relative to question 2, or is there still the potential that they may have something to say about question 2?
There's always the potential.
Yeah. But what's the rumblings been? Anything?
I have not seen anything from DESE indicating that adjustment or tweaking to the language was imminent. So I don't have any information that might be forthcoming. I guess I would just say, thank you for the conversation earlier, and very, very happy to come to the committee with a recommendation sooner than
Okay.
February 3rd. Just, that wasn't on the calendar, and we knew we weren't going to be ready tonight, so.
Okay.
And I guess I would also just say that it also is possible that a policy could be adopted so that there's total peace of mind for the class of 25, and then it could be revisited for class of 2026 going forward.
Speaking of which, Superintendent, do you plan to, I presume you do, host a town hall or an assembly with the students to?
Thank you for that question. I actually had the opportunity to present this exact information to the faculty at the high school this afternoon. And so we have not talked about an assembly with students. I'll talk with Mr. Mastrangelo to see whether that may already have been scheduled with the current 10th graders, and some 9th graders will be taking the MCAS this year, as well as students in the 12th grade who this policy would be relevant for.
Okay. All right, everybody, there you have it. So be prepared. You know, we'll come together remotely to have the recommendation or not. It may not be referred. I've seen that happen, but rarely. To take it up at some point soon, sooner rather than February 3rd, I think it was. So, all right. Let's go to your second item, Superintendent. Entry findings update.
Thank you. So just be sharing some updates on the priority items that I spoke about when we last met in December. I want to share with you some additional themes that have come up from our town hall meetings and looking at all the input we received at those gatherings, as well as the listening sessions with our staff. And we launched a parent caregiver survey in December, which wrapped up just before the break. So I'll just be sharing about all of that and opportunities for engagement for the public coming up in January and February. I shared this last time. You know, the most of the fall was listening and learning. Really me meeting with caregivers and parents and stakeholders, educators, students across the district, and just hearing from them what they thought they loved about Malden Public Schools, and then also the things that they thought were in urgent need of attention, and what their longer term aspirations were for our district. We've been analyzing all of that input. I mentioned we had a follow-up survey with our parents, and this was the timeline, engaging students, continued observations of classes and focus groups. And that report of entry findings I'll be bringing to you in the spring, currently scheduled for our meeting in March. These were the emerging priorities that I shared about during our meeting in December. And I just want to share the ones along the top are the ones that were things that we as a team at the district office really identified as an something urgent that couldn't wait until next year, something that we needed to do something about quickly. And then the ones in the bottom are things that are really for next year, but they really require a lot of advanced planning, and that's the reason that we're taking some specific actions right now. And so with that, I want to talk about communications. This was an issue that our educators raised as a concern, heard actually at one of the first school committee meetings I attended. Remember Mr. Gray spoke about the website and concern about the website. I heard that loud and clear from parents across the district as well. So communications has been a big focus. I mentioned the parent and caregiver survey. We launched a staff survey, which was just launched last Tuesday. And as of this afternoon, we already had 350 responses, which is exciting. We have improvement of our district website underway. and I've heard positive feedback on that. It's relevant and time and actually up to date in many ways, and easier to navigate than it was prior. We're also preparing a new website, which will be launching this spring. The contract for which was already in place, but we're finally getting to launch that much improved website later this school year. We're developing a regular cadence of communications from me. One of the items that we surveyed parents about was, how often do you want to hear from the district, and in what way? You want to get that phone call, or do you want to just email is good, thank you very much, or text updates, or just how they want to hear from the superintendent, from the district, and we're developing a regular cadence of that. And then engaging through social media, something that we're on top of now, and a new district-wide communications platform that parents will be able to interact with their school, with their child's teacher, and we'll have the same platform kindergarten through pre-kindergarten through 12th grade that'll be coming in July. A lot of these efforts have been made possible by a critical addition to our team. Her name is Tess Mahar, and she's in the audience tonight. She's our communications coordinator, and she has been very busy since the end of October when she joined our team. So we're really grateful for her. Extracurriculars. We heard a consistent concern was especially our middle school parents, middle school caregivers, that there needed to be more for their students to experience in general, and then also after school. We've collaborated with principals to provide more opportunities, more clubs, and those started today. I heard just a sampling of some of the things that are happening. We heard about band at BB. There's an after-school band, an after-school theater club there, among others. Linden, they've got Tiger TV, which is going to have a weekly broadcast within their school community. The students are putting that together, along with the volleyball club, which I think has at least 30 students involved. Crochet and art clubs at Salemwood are examples of things going on there. And there's a bunch of clubs at Ferryway with more than 130 middle school students involved. So that's all just started today, and something that we wanted to try to be responsive about to make sure that our middle school students had more after-school opportunities. Our MCAS prep. I mentioned about this earlier. One specific thing is this Acceleration Academy. Assistant Superintendent McDonald is taking the lead on, working closely with Assistant Superintendent Bassine and our directors to make sure that we have something that's meaningful for students, not just for MCAS, but definitely including MCAS, to prepare them for graduation and for the world beyond graduation. We talked about attendance we talked about chronic absenteeism a great deal at our last meeting. 3 things that are going on. Again, this is under the leadership of Assistant Superintendent McDonald. We have a message that went out to all families about the importance of attendance in December. There's an attendance playbook with general how we as a district and how each school, how each teacher at every level of the organization, how we can promote attendance for our students and intervene effectively when students are not in school, and making sure that that's something that's being done consistently across the board. And schools are working on focusing on students that are chronically absent. We have worked with all of our district leadership, our directors, our principals, our assistant principals, our program managers on different elements of this. It's something that we're developing in a very collaborative way. It's not, Ms. McDonald didn't go home on the weekend and come up with a playbook and then tell everybody, okay, this is what we're doing. Like, it's something, there's a lot of collaboration, a lot of input from a lot of folks to come up with something effective. And we'll be having more community engagement to stress the importance of daily attendance as well. Recruitment, I the parent who spoke earlier about the unfilled position at BB, which that is one of a few vacant positions that we still have. The number of vacant positions has shrunk, thankfully, over the course of the year, but we still have some in world language, in special education, in English as a second language, which are difficult to fill. And when there are fewer applicants out there and districts are competing with one another to attract those folks to our district, we have engaged with a professional educational recruiter to fill those vacancies and also hard to fill vacancies we anticipate for next year. We're also on track to post anticipated vacancies earlier. Our assistant superintendents and director of finance, Ms. Mertz, they've been meeting with principals over the last few days, and they'll be meeting with them next week to confirm the staff for this year. And also, if there are, we're going to begin having those conversations about any anticipated vacancies for next year, especially folks that are have already put in their papers to retire or for another reason are leaving our district. So we can advertise those anticipated vacancies earlier in the year when more people are looking for positions. High school schedules. The main reason I was at the high school today was to speak with all of the faculty about work that we're doing, collaborative work we're doing to address some challenges with our high school schedule. Many of you are familiar with the term directed study. It's a class where students are with a teacher, but they're essentially accountable to themselves for how they use that time. It's not, we don't feel that, and this is universal, staff are concerned about it, the administration at the high school. My first day at Malden High School back in June, when I was just visiting the district right after my appointment, Mr. Mastrangelo brought this to my attention as something that was in need of attention. We currently have 664 students. It's about a third of the school that don't have a full schedule of 7 classes, and they have a directed study as one of their 7 classes. More than 120 of those 664 have 2 or more directed studies. And we feel it is urgent for us to fix this and make sure that all of our students have a full schedule of classes next year. We are engaged in a collaborative process to go about fixing it. We've engaged with an external technical assistance provider, Education Resource Strategies, who has spent the last few weeks analyzing our students' transcripts, analyzing our scheduling information, and they're going to be bringing some data to us next week. We have a design team made up of our district leadership and some key people at the high school, including 3 classroom teachers. And I also want to shout out, we've had very collaborative support from the union, President Giswaldo, as well as members of our executive board are also part of that design team. And we'll be meeting again next week. And Mr. Mastrangelo has really embraced this opportunity to make sure that we do right by all kids at Malden High. English learners, we have some places in our district where students at beginning levels of learning English have been in self-contained settings, which has prevented them from interacting with English-speaking peers and learning English much more rapidly, as well as learning just making friends across different lines of difference. Under the leadership of Assistant Superintendent Bassine and our multilingual learner education director, Carmen Levisay, we have already made sure that all of those students are integrated with English-speaking peers and non-multilingual learners during lunch, which is awesome. In just a couple of weeks, when the 3rd quarter starts, we're also going to have them fully integrated during exploratory classes, which is going to give them an opportunity on a daily basis to interact with English-speaking peers to begin that social development and English learning in a more informal setting that they have been limited in to this point. We're also working with teachers, both those who teach English as a second language, but also other educators as well, and the leaders in our buildings to optimize programming for English learners for all of our students who are learning English, grades K to 12. Those sessions have started this month, listening sessions for educators that at the K-8 level, but that work will continue throughout the spring. And again, we have to do it now in order to be able to affect and impact the schedules and the programming that we'll have for our students next year. I also just want to share some emerging themes from the town hall's listening sessions and the parent caregiver survey. On the urgent attention, on the urgent attention needed category, special education is something that has been raised as an area of urgent attention, as well as curriculum and instruction for advanced learners. Students who are well above meeting grade level expectations, they're well beyond that, making sure that they're feeling challenged and purposeful in their daily learning experiences. Recess and physical activity was identified by many parents as something that they wanted to see a more holistic approach to, and more time given to students to develop both physically and socially in recess opportunities. And then teacher support and training, making sure that our teachers have the training and the support to be able to meet the diverse learners that are in front of them every day. As far as longer term concerns, we asked the parents what would you like to see in Malden Public Schools in 5 to 10 years? Expanded funding was something that a lot of them identified as a concern. Again, mental and physical well-being, making sure that we're educating the whole child. Rigorous curriculum for all students, both those who are learning English and those who already are fluent English speakers, those who, regardless of their background, making sure that we have a rigorous curriculum for all of them. And then world language education, making sure that we've got a good system and approach that is accessible to students across the district. So again, this is the path that we're following to continue to engage with people. I do want to thank all of the parents and caregivers who were a part of our town halls in the fall, those who came in person and those who engaged in the virtual town hall in November. There will be opportunities for more engagement for parents. That last one says focus groups and town hall meetings by topic. And so, for example, you could anticipate for advanced learners having a meeting just for parents and caregivers across the district who have that as an interest. It wouldn't necessarily be at a school, particular school, but it will be available for all parents to have that conversation across schools. Special education, students who are learning English, the recess concern. These are things that we'll be able to have meetings specifically for those topics. And we'll need to figure out the logistics of whether we can offer those on a virtual basis as well. Last thing, just that we'll also be talking with students. I've had the pleasure of meeting with many students over the course of the last 6 months. And we do, I also had focus groups with students, just them and me, where they've been able to be very, very open and honest once they got warmed up about their opinions and feelings about things that they love about their school, and also things that they'd like to see changed. And that will be continuing in this next season leading up to that report of entry findings. Last thing I'll just say to close my report is congratulations to the class of 2025. We will get the competency determination figured out. Will not hold anyone back, as long as you've met those local requirements. And then the graduation will be Sunday, June 1st, as you all decided and approved last September at 2 p.m. at McDonald Stadium. The last day of school for seniors will be 12 days before the last day of the school for the rest of the district, which is Wednesday, May 28th. As I think I put in a memo that I shared with you all last week. So looking forward to seeing all of you on June 1st, and as well as the other events we'll be having throughout the spring to celebrate our seniors. So thank you.
Very good. Let's take questions. Any questions on the second half of the superintendent's report? Let's start with Ms. Macklin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To the superintendent, I knew during our meeting that we had last month in your office, and you did highlight the concern with the directed study. And I'm just wondering what determines that scheduling and who gets one directed study, who gets two directed study classes, and if you could speak to the demographic with that. So, my concern is if they're, special needs learners or English language learners, or a disproportionate number are students of color. If you could just speak to that, if you know.
No, thank you for that question. And just to clarify, the meeting we held in my office was with yourself and member Rose Zyberg only. So that question you're asking about is precisely one of the things we're going to be looking at with the help of the technical assistance provider who's working with us, because we want to see on a variety of dimensions whether there are students who are more likely to be in a directed study than not. Are there students who are meeting Mass Core requirements more than others? Are there students who are graduating? We already know from the data that we looked at, I believe in December, that there are certain demographics where the graduation rate is not as high as the school average, as the district average. So these are all things that we're looking at. The answer to your other question about what decides who gets a directed study or how many, it's very, very complex. It's very, very complex. And it really has a lot to do with sometimes courses that students request are already full, and they do assign students to courses that have been requested randomly. What I mean by that is they don't preference certain students over others when they have an oversubscribed course. But when that happens, and if there's not another course that the student is also interested in available when they have a slot in their schedule to fill, then that typically is when a directed study comes into play. However, it's very complex, and there are many, many different circumstances that affect that. But again, we'll have a much better understanding of that once we have seen the data from education resource strategies that are bringing to our design team next week. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we're going to go to Mr. Bernard. He'll be followed by Ms. Horty, and then we'll go over to Mr. Gray.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think this is just probably a really quick question. I'm excited that we're going and being really proactive on the recruitment. And I know that, we're trying to go and also be proactive with people that might be going and leaving our system for retirement and whatnot. Just kind of went and triggered something that we were always have seemed to be in lacking substitute teachers, and typically we went and we tried to go and recruit from people that already had their teaching licenses and people that may have been in retirement. And I'm wondering, are we making any efforts to go and retain people that may be going for a retirement and seeing if they would be willing to go and do the substitute teaching Or another thing that hit my brain was if they would be willing to go in and help with the advising some of these afternoon post-school activities, where we might not be able to go and find a teacher that would be willing to be an advisor.
Thank you for the question. I am aware anecdotally of several retirees across the district who are working as in that kind of capacity, in the substitute capacity. But we're absolutely interested in wanting to, many times people for very healthy reasons are ready to move on to the next chapter. But there are folks who are still local and love being in schools, and it still brings them joy. Some folks who are working as literacy assistants, for example, several of them are retired elementary teachers, and it's wonderful to have them as a part of what we're doing. But yes, that's absolutely something that we'll continue to look at.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Bernard. Over to Ms. Horty, then Mr. Gray.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a quick question about the extracurriculars for middle school students. I'm excited to hear that this is happening. One of the questions that I have though, because I felt like this was something that came up even at the town hall that we were at together, maybe at Forestdale. One of the issues that I remember people discussing is that in the past there had been a chess club, but there was only a chess club at Forestdale, let's say. So, and I know we had talked with everyone at that meeting too about the transportation being an issue. Has that come up with this? Are we addressing that? Are we able to replicate clubs at all 5 schools? If not, have we talked about how we can assist the older students in getting to where they need to be?
Thank you for that question. At this point, we were excited to get clubs available to students, period. And a lot of it has to do with the interests and the passions and the background of the educators in each of those buildings. I didn't have updates from Forestdale because there were some developments there, positive developments that prevented me from getting that update. But we'll make sure we bring that next time. And as far as transportation, it's just really early at this point. Transportation, I know is not really feasible, but as far as if something's a hit in one place, finding a way for teachers who have a similar interest to get it up off the ground at another school, that's something we'll definitely look at.
One of the things that I was even thinking about is just a possibility. Someone had mentioned it at some point along these discussions, even for, so like if there's something at like Salem Wood is a much larger school than Forestdale, there's a higher chance that there will be an activity or a club or a group there. Is there any way that we or the adults in the building could sort of organize everyone together and have them kind of do a walking school bus to Salem Wood? It's not that far. You know, and I mean, 6th, 7th, and we're talking about 6th, 7th, and 8th graders here. I'm not talking about sending very young elementary school students. A lot of those students are dismissed at the end of the day to go about their business, whatever that may be. But I'm just wondering if we want to think about how we can help facilitate some of those things going forward. I agree with you. I'm not trying to push this, but I'm just saying, like, as we're thinking about expanding, I feel like this is going to come up.
Okay.
Thank
you
you.
very much.
Thank you, Ms. Horty. Now, Mr. Gray, then we'll go to Ms. Rose Zyberg, and we'll end with Ms. Spatafora.
Mr. Chair. I'm sure most people here know me by now. I'm going to drill down on the communications. The first 4 bullet points of the communication section are very clear, very straightforward. But there's a little bit of fuzziness as far as, in my mind, engagement through social media. I don't know if that can be answered now, but probably in future sessions, we can get maybe a clearer explanation of what that actually means, because that's very broad and very vague at the same time. Because right now we have plenty of PTO in various spontaneous parent groups all across the city in the district on various social media platforms. I don't know if the intent is to integrate with that or have an official school social media outlet in addition to all these other spontaneous PTOs and whatever brought up. But also, it seems that engagement through social media is about 1 degree of separation from establishing a new district-wide communications. In the future, maybe that needs to be a little bit explained more, because right now I think we have email, we have text messages, and we have different portals in place. You know, so if we're gonna have a new district-wide communication, what's that gonna consist of? And are we gonna dump some of the older platforms or grandfather them in and keep them? There's sometimes issues where parents and families are confused which communication platform to use. And there's a whole bunch of them currently on the current website. So I'm hoping that gets drilled down and clarified for the future. That's pretty much all I want to say. I just want to point out those 2 things are pretty broad and pretty vague. And as I see it, that's the future of the district as far as communications online. But I also see it as a bucket load of work. That's a lot of work to set up engagement through social media and a new platform and maintain it and create engagement so people use it.
So,
Thank you, Mr. Craig. So first of all, much more can be said. On the engagement through social media, what is intended there at this point is really using district accounts that were already established on Facebook, Instagram, X, and I believe there may be one other, where it's just a way for parents to, another way, if parents, that's something that check more than their email, for example, or if they check that more than certain other modes of communication, that some announcements and some events that are happening in the district, or just good things that are happening, or there's a way for us to get that word out in those spaces. The platform is something that will, if you think about, we have the Connect platform that my messages go out to all of the parents and caregivers through, and to the district staff, which is able to do simultaneous email and phone calls. We have the class dojo, which is used at the classroom level and the school level to communicate with parents in most of our elementary schools. We have Talking Points, which is another system, another platform that's used at the high school to get messages out, along with Some More, which is another platform which gets written communication out. The platform that we'll have will replace all of those things and will be one system that parent will learn when the child enters kindergarten, and they'll have it all the way through. And if they have children at the high school and an elementary school, they'll be able to use the same platform for all of their children in the district. And we're being a little bit vague about it right now. I don't want to alarm people. There's going to be a very, very thoughtful rollout and preparation for people to begin to get acquainted with the new platform before it's the thing that we're using. But it's being used in multiple other districts, and it's very, very positive. I will say it also will allow teachers to communicate directly with students. It's not just from the principal for parents and teachers to communicate directly as well. But that's what that platform is that I'm referring to, and we'll bring much more information about it so you understand it.
One of my many concerns is I've never even heard of it, but it sounds like it's good. But if it can potentially filter, because there's going to be information that parents of high school students aren't
aren't going to want to hear about what's going on in K-8 and vice versa.
Yes.
So if there's some sort of filtering system built in, that's even better.
Yes. And I'll just add that it will have things, it'll have an app that you'll be able to get things on the app if you choose, or if you prefer just to let it go to your email, that's fine too. You can prefer whether to get text messages or getting messages directly through the app. There'll be a lot of customizable things that we'll have workshops for parents so they learn how to use it and in a way that makes things easier, not harder.
Good. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Gray. Over to Ms. Rose Zyberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Piggybacking somewhat on Ms. Horty's comments with transportation issues and things and looking at equity issues between the extracurricular programming. And again, thank you to everybody involved with getting that up and running, because I do hear about that a lot. I don't know if people have explored using technology to link the schools so that what you're doing in one classroom, and we all know, I get it, COVID and all of that stuff, still, probably we don't want to go back to that stuff, but there were positive things that we learned from those lessons. So if there's a classroom at Salemwood that could be communicating with the classroom at Forestdale and getting double the impact, might be something to look into. So where we can't physically move kids, connect them electronically. Be happy to talk to you more about that. I did do some work with that kind of programming. Curious on that, do the kids have to pay? And is it are the people doing it, are they getting stipends for coming in and teaching? And now is it limited to teaching staff currently? Will it open up to community members who might be interested in coming in? I was interested when you said even like crocheting and things like that, which is, sort of a different skill set. And also because I do that. I just thought there might be people out there who would have a skill that they'd never even thought, gee, I could bring this into a classroom.
Thank you for that question. We were able to, just to be clear, this is not an everyday activity. It's just a certain number of days per week or one day per week in many cases. And so there is a stipend for teachers who are the advisor for the activity that we're able to get off the ground. But there's a limited budget for it. As far as volunteers from outside the school coming in to participate, that's something that I think is very intriguing to explore. But that we're just started day one with it today.
It's great. It's great to see it going. Yeah. Okay.
All right, thank you. And finally, Ms. Spatafor.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I love that idea, like a hybrid somehow connecting, if we have, Ms. Forty said chess club or whatever, and we could somehow connect it in another school. I think that's genius and absolutely should be looked into. So I think Mr. Gray brought up some really great questions along communication, and one that I would like to task you with actually is doing an audit on our communication platforms, because I find that we have a handful that may have parents still on them that are no longer parents in those schools. Does that become a safety issue? Being able to access information and no longer be there. So I'd love to see an audit done on Class Dojo, Talking Points, how many people have access to these platforms. Because very easily you can move out of a district and, we all have some sort of app that sends us notifications that we may not use, but we could also have the 1 in a million that would want to use it for more nefarious. So,
Madam Vice Chair, can I just respond to that? With the one advantage of the program that we'll be launching next year is that it is fully synchronized with Aspen every night. And so if a child does withdraw from the district or does withdraw from the school, then that account is closed in the system. And they also, it also makes it much easier for the teachers instead of having to set up their Class Dojo themselves and then managing who's in, who's out. It'll all be done through the nightly sync with Aspen. So That's something that we'll definitely look into, because a lot of these platforms that we are currently using do rely on the educators or other people to make those changes. I think our Connect platform syncs with Aspen, and so that's not an issue, but some of the things being used at the school site, I'll look into that.
Fantastic. Thank you. And that's great. I think Aspen has been underutilized thus far. So being able to have that connection. And then just lastly, when we talk about, and we've had many conversations on attendance in these directed studies. And maybe this is more of a conversation offline, but 120 students have 2 directed studies on their schedule. So chances are, at least in an 8-block period, at least once a day, they're sitting in a study.
Over the course of 2 days. Correct.
Over a course of, so each day,
Right.
if they have 2 directed, we're talking about 120 have 2. Are they on set? I'd just be curious, are they on separate days, or is there a possibility that they have period 1 and 2 as directed study? So they only have 2 classes on blue day. And then if 2 teachers are out, is a student sitting in SSC for an entire day?
Well, these are the things that
I
we're
asked the
looking into it.
question- I asked the
Yes.
question because this is happening in my household.
Okay.
So I think it's top of the list. And I know we've had this conversation, but like if we can like even push it along further, because it's so important, because the absentee rates are, and I see it, because kids don't, if they have nothing to do, they don't want to be in school.
And that's not just your experience, Madam Spatafora, and it's not
120 kids'
anecdotal.
experience.
Well, no, but we were able to see for students with directed studies, the number of days absent is higher than for the students who have no
Interesting.
directed studies. So that's
Interesting.
that's a quantitative fact. And duly noted, and the high school team and our team of the district, we're going to work with all deliberate speed to fix this.
Well, kudos to the team for making this a priority, especially as we enter this world of looking at graduation requirements and making sure these students are getting, we're following Mass Core and they have to have those 22 credits or whatever it may be. And then all of a sudden we get to senior year and they're like, oh my gosh, I'm short 8 credits. And how do you, or whatever it may be, how do you squeeze that in so you can walk across a stage? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Spatafora. Just a technical point, graduation June 1st. I think on the calendar, is it still June 8th? Can we update
So
that?
the calendar on the website says June 1st.
Okay.
It
Because I did a
does.
Google search and it came up as June 8th. I don't know if that-
There may be a previous version of the calendar before the committee voted in September.
Okay.
It was a PDF, and so that older version may be in circulation on some websites, but the date is Sunday, June
Very good.
1st.
All right, let's take some points of personal privilege. Are there any? Go ahead, Ms. Woody.
Ask this previously, and thank you, Ms. Spatafora, because it made me jog my memory. With the directed study classes, my understanding, and I could be wrong about this, so please correct me if you know that I am, especially for, let's say, like the freshman class, that there was a level of directed study that was slightly different for them than there was for the other grades.
Yes.
Meaning, if you're thinking that the majority of our students are coming from a K-8 school where they've really maybe only ever been to that K-8 school and they go to this giant high school, that they might need a little bit of extra support. So that's what the directed study sort of existed for in some ways, like supporting them through some of that. Am I wrong? If I am, is there a way that we can still support freshmen in the way that I'm talking about if we're not doing that? Because I feel like we should be.
So what I can tell you is that as students go up in grade from 9 to 10 and 10 to 11, 11 to 12, the number of students in a directed study increases. And in many ways is because students have already met many of their graduation requirements. And so they can afford, if you will, to have not a full schedule, more than a student in ninth grade could. Not that we think it's healthy for any of them, but that's in the data. That is the case that ninth graders have fewer ninth graders, very few ninth graders have a directed study, where much larger number of seniors do. And as far as which ninth graders have a directed study, I would really need to follow up on that question.
And sorry, one more thing.
Yes.
If we're going to reduce the amount of directed studies, and I completely understand what you're saying, that, you know, as a senior, I've met almost all of my requirements. I've requested electives that I cannot get into because they're either full or the class size to begin with is small. Is there a way that we're going to be expanding some of the elective options too? Because I'm sitting here saying to myself, when I look at the course book for the options that are there, they look great. There are wonderful options there. Are we offering enough sections? Do we have the manpower to offer enough sections? I know a schedule change is probably needed as well, but have we thought about where that goes? I know that that involves like teacher schedule and things like that, but.
Those are the questions that we're engaging with the design team and the support of ERS to really look at, because we want to make sure that we've got hard, good data that we're making the decisions on, and the opportunities that exist with the current staff that we have, or is there additional staff, but how much? Because we don't know what the budget looks like for next year, and there are definite constraints. Are there better ways we can use the staff that we have? And are there adjustments to the schedule and the structure itself that might be required? So all of those questions are the questions that we're engaged in.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Points of personal privilege, left to right. Mr. Bernard.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just some announcements from the Salem Wood. This Wednesday, there's an 11 a.m. dismissal. Make sure that you're coming to pick your kids up on time at 11. On Thursday, January 16th, there's going to be Title I Family Night Zumba from 6 to 7:30 p.m. in the 5 to 8 Cafe. And then Wednesday, January 29th, there's going to be a District Family Math Night from 6 to 7:30 in the 5 to 8 Cafe.
Very good. Ms. Rose Zyberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. From the Linden PTO for the K-2, this Wednesday, from 3 to 6, there's a dine out at Chuck E. Cheese in Everett. They'll get a little bit of money from that, but also just to give kids something to do on their half day and to get together, spend some time together. Then on Sunday, we talked about this last meeting. It's the first ever craft party / stuffy sleepover, which is stuffed animals. So that is for grades K-3. That's going to be from 1 to 3 at the Linden. There'll be a craft and storytelling. So students would bring their stuffed animal and a shoebox, and then they decorate the shoebox, and their stuffed animal will get to sleep over at the Linden, and they will get that back on Monday. Starting February 1st is the readathon at Linden. It's kids will be tracking their times, and then there are different awards and things given out between individuals and for classes. And they're really looking to try to help encourage reading, especially during the school break. To have it then, they have arranged already for some authors to be coming in, but if people want to volunteer to come in and read to a classroom, all of us included, you can get in touch with them over there as well to volunteer your time for that. Their middle school club, to be on the lookout, they're going to be hosting some fundraisers. Just been learning a little bit more about their club there. It's run by Miss Ramos, a science teacher who's there. The kids have been involved with doing Model UN And actually, they did one competition. They came back, they actually received an award. They got Best Public Speaker. And have been invited to attend other ones. So they're doing fundraisers to help offset the cost for that. And so they will be looking to set those up. So just sort of, that's just a placeholder to be looking for upcoming fundraisers. And it's great because the kids actually work on talking to other kids in the school. Gee, what would you like for a fundraiser? What would you want to do? So I like that way that they're incorporating the kids from really setting a goal and finding their own ways how to get there. So that will be coming up as well. And that's all I've got.
Very good. Over to Ms. Horty.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On Wednesday, the 8th, the For Sale PTO will have a virtual meeting at 7 o'clock. On January 21st, from 6 to 7:30 is Family Zumba Night at Forest Sale, sponsored by Title I. It's in the cafeteria. That sounds very fun. Please attend if you can. On January 24th, the winter ball for grades for grades 3 and 4 will be happening. Please pay attention to your email and messages, because more information will be coming out about the details surrounding that. And that is always a well-attended and fun time for students as well. Thank you.
Any other news out of the Forest Hill you want to share?
I guess so, yeah. Mr. Weldi is a very proud father to Chelsea. 7 pounds, I believe, roughly, wide-eyed and ready for the world. So
Very good. Congratulations.
we're very excited for him and Tori.
All right, Ms. Spatafor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Out of BB, so this Wednesday, 11 a.m. dismissal. Thursday, January 9th starts our access testing. Let's see, Wednesday, also January 8th, the BBPTO will be meeting from 6 to 7 p.m. And you can find the Google Meet link on the PTO Facebook page. Also, Tuesday, January 14th, Title I Zumba Night at BB in the gym starting at 6 p.m. A reminder, no school on January 20th to honor Martin Luther King Jr. Day. Wednesday, January 22nd, the BB School Site Council will be meeting at 5 p.m. and the link can be found on the school website. January 29th and 30th, Dentacare will be on site for dental checkups. And then Saturday, January 18th at Malden High School, the Chinese Cultural Connection will be hosting the Lunar New Year celebration from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. And then citywide, we have Saturday, January 18th, Emmanuel Baptist Church is hosting a Martin Luther King Day celebration from 3 p.m. to 6 p.m.
Very good. We'll now entertain a motion to go into executive session. Motion by Mr. Bernard, seconded by Mr. McCarthy. Clerk will call the roll. Yes.
Mr. Drummy? Mr. McCarthy?
Yes.
Ms. Spatafora?
Yes.
Ms. Macklin?
Yes.
Ms. Horty?
Yes.
Mr. Gray?
Yes.
Mr. Bernard?
Yes.
Ms. Rose Iberg?
School committee is hereby in executive session.